today's top boxing news.
I think we got to start putting some barometers on this pound for pound thing, and I'm gonna tell you why. Earl should have never been, and I said this after a while, because we had this topic a long time ago when Earl was top 3, and we was debating whether Earl should have been as high as he was on the pound for pound list. I said something back then, and I'm going to stand by it now. I think that if you're not undisputed, if you're not a multi-weight division champ, you shouldn't be on the pound for pound list. You have to prove that shit, man. I don't care. We can look at the talent all we want to. You have to prove that shit.
I don't mind that perspective. I don't mind it at all. That being a pound-for-pound elite fighter is something you have to prove. But sometimes after a fight, the fans get carried away. Like what they're doing with Jaron Ennis now because of his win over Eimantas Stanionis. And it's a good win. It's a credible scalp. He was a champion. But at least for me, that's not enough to put him on a pound-for-pound list.
And what he said about Errol?
No, I rated Errol Spence Jr., though not as highly as some others. Not as high as ESPN. Not as high as Ring Magazine or BoxRec. Should it be a requisite that a fighter either be an undisputed champion or a multi-weight champion before he or she can receive a ring? Well, it's not that. I think that specifically needs to be a requisite, that you need to be undisputed first. There's room for a unified champion at a single weight to occupy a spot on a pound-for-pound list, but it should never be very high. Not if there are other fighters who have also been unified, but have also been champions at more than one weight. Those fighters should rank ahead of that fighter by default.
So Errol wasn't pound for pound?
No, I rated him. I absolutely did. Because he beat a champion in Kell Brock, then another one in Sean Porter, and then another in your Denis Ugas. That was enough to get him on and keep him on that string of victories.
So I rated Gennady Golovkin,
who was only ever a champion at one weight, but he was a unified champion with a lot of successful title defenses, and that was enough to get him on and keep him on.
So you can get on, depending on what the circumstances are and what other fighters are there.
It's possible, but it shouldn't be easy. And maybe therein lies the dilemma, what the caller was attempting to address, that so many people so often give it away so easily. There are some that are already ranking Jaron Ennis for beating Eimantas Stanionis.
It's an example of how the fans get carried away.
Because he became a unified champion? Yanni Beck was a unified champion before him. Shouldn't he get a spot then?
Zerto's a unified champion too, and not just. He's been a champion at 2 weights.
So many decide who they want to put on a pound-for-pound list based on their own interpretations of talent that are not unanimous and are not consistent across the board. And that's what I think the caller was trying to address, that it should be a lot harder to get on that list and stay on. It should be difficult. It's supposed to be.
If this is the cream of the crop, it shouldn't be as simple as beating Eimantas Stanionis and you're on.
Pound-for-pound eliticism and skill are not some ethereal property that cannot be properly measured. There are earmarks.
There are indicators.
But to do this properly, you have to be consistent. What is an indicator for one must also be an indicator for some, for all. Don't make it easy for one guy just because you like him, because then that ain't no pound-for-pound list. That's just a list of your favorite fighters. As much as this is talked about within the boxing community,
in the boxing sphere,
there is not a clear and consistent rating system for rating pound-for-pound eliticism, but there should be. That what works for one guy should also work for another.
Otherwise, what are we doing?
And I get what the caller was getting at, what he was suggesting, that it should be harder to get on there, and that it is something you should have to prove beyond the measures of interpretation.
Just interpretation as opposed to irrefutable facts.
You should have to prove it. It should be subject to a little bit more than just interpretation, and on that much, I agree.
Champion? I'm the champion. Yeah, rightfully so. I'm the champion. He's not no champion. He had to work his way, but he still ain't there yet. So my whole thing is, look, I'm gonna go out there and do what I gotta do, have fun, and beat the brakes off this boy. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Make of Teofimo Lopez refusing to face off against Arnold Barboza on stage and seemingly zipping off in a hurry, How are we to interpret this? I can only remember one other time in recent memory where one fighter refused to face off with the other. That was Tyson Fury.
Ahead of the first Usyk fight, you remember? He didn't want to look at the guy head on. Didn't want to face him.
Do a stare down. And we see something similar here between Teofimo Lopez and Arnold Barboza. I said it in my previous video. Teofimo's not here willingly. He's under orders from the WBO to face Arnold. And if not for that, he wouldn't be fighting him.
He's never wanted to fight him. Some years ago when they were both under the top-ranked banner.
Teofimo Lopez expressed explicitly that he did not want to face that quote-unquote bum Arnold Barboza. That's what he said. That's what he said live on camera. One other instance I remember where he was confronted by Arnold Barboza at some kind of a gathering, some kind of show.
Arnold is campaigning for the fight. He wants to have it. Teofimo didn't want to give him the time of day then. Walked off and left his father to contend with Arnold.
More of the same here. You're fighting this guy on Friday. Why don't you just do a face-off? You've done face-offs with other fighters. What specifically about him?
What bothers you so much about him?
How do you guys out there interpret this behavior from Teofimo, who basically rushed off stage?
Notice he was wearing sunglasses too?
Tell me in the comments. Tell me your thoughts. What do you make of Teofimo Lopez not wanting to face off against Arnold?
Did he seem nervous to you? Because he seemed nervous to me.
Rattled. There's something about Arnold he just doesn't like. Something unnerving. And given how Teofimo has been looking in his last 5 fights over the last 5 years, he's only had one stellar showing. Only one, and that was the Josh Taylor fight. The rest of the time, he's looked bang average.
Where Arnold seemingly has a lot of momentum going in, upsetting the apple cart for former unified champion Jose Ramirez, then again for Jack Catterall in Manchester.
I mean, he's got to be feeling good about himself, but does Teofimo? When you refuse to face off against the guy you're going to be fighting in, what, 2 or 3 days?
You don't want to stand right in front of him. You don't want to look him in the eyes. Is that how somebody who's confident behaves?
Now, forecasting the outcome of the fight should be based on a little bit more than that, but that in and of itself is indicative of something.
Doesn't want to fight this guy.
My interpretation of it is that Teo doesn't like fighting taller, longer fighters than he is. He struggles with that.
Since the days of Masayoshi Nakatani.
In tandem with Arnold Barboza's methodology, that he's not a bruiser, he's not a brawler, he's not just going to barrel forward and give up his height to you. You have to go get it.
Get him.
Not the flashiest style, but still able to pose some challenges for a fighter like Teofimo, who's all right hanging back and setting traps, but coming forward, he's not as dynamic, not as
capable.
And I have no reason to believe that Teofimo is all of a sudden going to show up a different fighter having patched those holes, because no major changes have been made to his corner. The saving grace was supposed to be working with Eddie Reynoso, but now we know that is not to be.
There's no reason to believe we're going to see something new from Teofimo or something better, because nothing changed.
He may put forward another lackluster showing, like he did with Sandor Martin, and like he did with Jermaine Ortiz, those moving targets, with the difference being, he's not the house fighter this time. He doesn't have that safety net.
This is not a top-rank show.
There is potential for an upset. There is room for an upset on Friday with 2 of the 4 fights on the bill. The Haney versus Ramirez fight, and this one.
Of those 2, which do you think stands a greater chance of producing an upset?
I think it's this one. I think it's the Lopez fight. I'm fairly confident the bookies might have him the betting favorite going in.
But I happen to think Arnold Barboza is a live animal in this fight. He's a live underdog.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here, go with a ballsy prediction, and I'm going to go with Arnold. I'm going to go with Arnold Barboza to upset Teofimo Lopez via a points decision to become the new WBO champion.
I've been wrong about Teofimo in the past. I don't deny that. But even a broken clock is right twice a day.
The way he's been behaving, the way he's been performing, does not inspire confidence in me that he can take care of business on Friday. So I'm going to go with Arnold.
See if the prediction sticks.
The acting you did that night, you've heard of the Oscars, right? The Emmys. You should be given an Oscar for the performance. You conned the referee, you conned us, you conned the boxing world. I've always maintained that, and I'll still maintain it. You pride yourself as a God-fearing man. Thou shalt not lie in the name of God. So I want to question, what kind of God do you worship? Period. You can look at me as much as you want. In fact, I'll give you a photograph of mine. You can take it home and study it. You're very mentally strong, but you've met somebody who's stronger than you.
I believe for Jesus.
Jealous of what?
I believe.
Of what? Tell me what.
For Jesus.
Jealous of what?
Yeah, you.
Explain yourself.
Saying Jesus.
Explain yourself.
Jesus.
Jesus. I'm jealous of Jesus.
Yeah.
Right.
Listen.
Do you know the way the God that
you're right.
The God
you're
that
right.
I worship, the way it works is that the God has summoned you to come back here for our son here, Daniel Dubois, to get revenge on you. That's why you're here.
Okay. You're right. I deserve Oscar. It's you.
Yes, you do.
You are.
Oscar is coming next.
You all right? Listen. You must teach your fighter punch clean, but I win this fight for right my hand like a jab, bam. Enough.
You're very comical as well. You're a comedian. When you finish boxing, you've achieved greatness, in my opinion. You go down as one of the generational great. Granted, nobody's denying that, but thou shalt not cheat.
Don Charles is still attempting to use Alexander Usyk's religion, his faith, against him, which I think is in poor taste.
Like many things you hear ahead of a fight, but it also reeks of desperation. He wants it to be Usyk's fault over something Usyk had no control over.
Low blow or otherwise, it was not up to Alexander Usyk to make that call. It was up to Louis Pabon, the referee, the third man in the ring, and he made that call in a split second.
Happened so fast, you can hardly blame Usyk for it.
Don Charles has been desperately trying to ever since their initial meeting, claiming that Usyk cheated.
Now, he claims that Alexander Usyk has met his match, and that even though he's mentally strong, Daniel is stronger, so why did he quit?
After the low blow or the body punch or whatever it was landed, why didn't you just stick to it? That if it was a legal punch, land some more legal punches, just like it. Why did you mentally check out?
What kind of an excuse is that?
After the first fight, you said that you felt Daniel Dubois had a dirty plan that night and that he landed several low blows. Do you still believe that today, or was it heat of the moment?
Yeah, we made the calculation. We watched the fight and counted the low blows that he landed, but referee did not pay attention to, and it was up to 20. For that reason, you made a conclusion that that was kind of a plan to play, let's say, dirty, maybe not dirty. Ooh. Haters say it's Photoshop. But it's not. That's a real one.
So there are several photos here of various punches from the first fight. I think there is one in front of Alexander Usyk he is looking at. He is asking for a pen and a marker. A member of his team is looking to give that to him. Frank, I think you've got a photo as well. Frank's going to sign it for him.
Fine.
So it would seem that Alexander Krassyuk and myself are of a similar mindset, because reviewing the tape, reviewing the fight, and these still images from it, look at some of those punches, look at where they landed, and look at where they were coming from, and tell me that it wasn't Daniel's intention to deliberately hit Alexander Usyk low, because what could he have been aiming for? As the taller, longer fighter, the bigger fighter,
How are so many of your punches ending up near his groin?
I believe it was their intention to take Usyk's legs away by hitting him low. Get away with whatever you can get away with for as long as you can, long enough that you may debilitate that fighter. And so, when Don Charles claims that Usyk cheated, I think he's projecting.
The byproduct of a guilty conscience. You know what you're capable of. You know you're capable of cheating, and thus, you accuse everybody of the same thing because you believe Everybody else is of a similar mindset.
Now, this is the most I've seen from Team Usyk addressing that fiasco, that controversy. Usyk, in his fashion, is using it to poke fun at Team Dubois, seated high. In the stands, he posted this still image saying, even at this height, we could see the punch was low.
Now, Usyk's entire approach to the controversy in the first fight, which was approximately 2 to 3 fights ago, he's not really stuck on it. He's not stuck on the past. But because Team Dubois keep bringing it up,
he can use that against them. Use that to rile up Daniel Dubois, rile up Don Charles, render them compromised.
it's clear their butt hurt about it.
Don Charles believes it is divine intervention that brings these two fighters back together, a chance for revenge.
Well, that's not very Christian.
Bringing up the 10 Commandments, saying thou shalt not lie.
Well, he said thou shalt not cheat. I'm not sure that's what it said in Hebrew.
But this whole bit about revenge, Don, you do realize that wrath is one of the 7 deadly sins, starring Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman.
Damn shame what they did to Gwyneth Paltrow.
A terrible business, and what is a plot hole in Don Charles's narrative. You're trying to use Usyk's faith, his Christianity, against him.
So what's that supposed to make you guys, the heroes?
Let's not stand on ceremony here.
If there were any truth to what Don Charles is accusing Usyk of, making off like a bandit, you wouldn't have a second crack at the apple. You wouldn't have another opportunity now. He could have fought Joseph Parker. He chose to fight you.
Usyk is only here because he wants to be here. He could have retired, sailed off into the sunset with all his money. He could have fought someone else.
Fought Joseph Parker.
It's only a rematch because Usyk allowed it to happen, like you only have a belt because he gave you one.
These events are only set in motion because Usyk is willing to fight you again. And that doesn't sound to me like the mindset of a cheater.
Somebody who made off like a bandit?
Somebody who deserves an Oscar? Don Charles and Daniel Dubois would be wise to stop focusing on the past and stop focusing on what you can't change.
Focus on what you can. Because if you're going in there with the same game plan as before, and I think you are,
History is doomed to repeat itself because you didn't learn anything.